For the next session, we will very nicely be able to allay and mitigate a lot of the therapeutic concerns for many practitioners and therapists out there in this time of pandemic. But first, let me introduce Mr. Bill Frost, a full-time clinical hypnotherapist and senior international lecturer with the London School of Clinical Communications and Hypnosis, with over 3,000 hours of classroom teaching experience since 2005. As a practitioner with more than 20 years experience in the coaching and personal development industry, Mr. Frost uses clinical hypnotherapy, EMDR, and NLP to successfully treat trauma and addictions, as well as a wide range of stress and anxiety-based issues. Mr. Frost moved to the field of psychotherapy from the defense and change management sectors, where he used NLP as an organizational change tool. Being an experienced hypnotherapist and NLP master practitioner and coach, he also offered his services as a former aid worker in several active war zones. He has also been involved in a number of psychotherapy research projects, including the development of software-based tools to automate a variety of EMDR, CBT, and NLP-based techniques. Mr. Frost hopes to transform the therapist's couch as we know it to something a little more virtual. From lighting to confidentiality, Mr. Frost has it all covered in this next session: online hypnotherapy, lessons learned from the COVID-19 lockdowns.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. So, good morning and afternoon and evening, depending on where you are, and welcome. My name is Bill Frost, and right now I'm moving house. So I pre-recorded my segment, which covers online therapy and the lessons that we have learnt from the COVID experience, which we can most certainly take forward into the future. I will take questions after that, and I'll also be in a breakout room a little bit later on as well. So, Steve, could you please play the video? Maybe it's Steve, maybe it's Julian. There we go. Yes. Hi there, my name is Bill Frost and I've been a therapist since around 1998. I've also been a lecturer since around 2005 or so, with the LSCCH Asia and the LSCCH. Today, I will be exploring some of the common mistakes we all, one way or another, tend to make along the path to online therapy enlightenment. This will include some of those key setup issues, such as lighting, the controversial concept of background audio, positioning of the camera for you and for your client. We'll also take a look at some of the technical challenges. For example, ensuring a good bandwidth and what to do when call quality reduces. We will also take a look at dealing with interruptions, concerns around confidentiality, virtual backgrounds, microphone selection, how to use filters or not, and a whole bunch of other things besides if we have time. Finally, we will consider the role of online therapy in the future. So, in terms of lighting, your best option is to get as much natural light into the room as humanly possible. Many therapists like to sit directly in front of a window. That means you're getting as much natural light as you possibly can. If you are going to use incandescent lights, try to use ones that are as unwarm as possible, so more in the direction of the white frequencies. Then you'll find that you won't get so much red in the picture. However, too much natural light from sunlight could result in you almost being blinded. So do consider whether it's appropriate to close the curtains to block some of that natural light out so you can work more effectively. So in terms of how to share sound or how to get background music, if you're into that, I'm not going to go into the arguments in terms of whether background music is a good idea or not, but if you do want to go down that route, then you will find that there are various options to share background music, both within Zoom and other similar platforms. Equally, you could go old school and use a stereo system, and many find that they get a better result by doing exactly that. So there are a number of options if you want to go down that route. However, do bear in mind that by using background music, you may well find that that impedes the audio quality when received by your client. That's a consideration. So let's take a look at camera positioning and where to position you in the frame. Some therapists like to make the experience very personal, like to get almost as close as humanly possible to the camera. If so, do make sure that there's nothing in your teeth. Do also remember that the convention, at very least, is to face the camera when you're talking to the camera. Equally, other therapists seem to try and get as far away from the camera as humanly possible, perhaps also maintaining that ships passing in the night posture, sitting to one side. Do also bear in mind that when you lean back in the chair, so your position in relation to the camera will also change, sometimes to the detriment of the overall picture. So, bandwidth is always a consideration, and there are a whole bunch of things that we can do, both our side and on the client side, to improve bandwidth. We can, for example, ask the client to avoid using 4G and using their wireless router instead. We should do the same. We can close all other programs other than Zoom or any of the other programs. And we can reduce the number of devices using broadband. However, sometimes it is always a matter of reality that bandwidth is poor no matter what we do, and in those circumstances, it is appropriate to use a videoless connection, either on your side or removing the video from the client side, or both parties choosing to avoid using video to improve bandwidth and preserve audio quality. However, if you do that, do make sure that your default picture conveys a professional image. Something else to consider is how you're dressed. And do remember that one form of dress code may be appropriate in one circumstance, but somewhat less appropriate and less professional in another context. So something to consider. Now, whilst we can't entirely prevent interruptions, what we can do is prevent a lot of them from occurring in the first place. We can secure our pets, ask our partners as therapists to remain on the other side of the door and to remain quiet. We can ask our clients' families to remain on the other side of the door to preserve that sense of confidentiality and to prevent interruptions. Equally, we need to switch off our own phones and ask the client to do the same. Oh, actually, I've got a delivery, excuse me. course, confidentiality is something that is of importance to us all. And it's important that our environment as therapists remains confidential, so there aren't people wandering around. Equally, it is important if we realize that our patient is in a compromising situation. Let's say they're at work in a busy office, or perhaps they're in a car, or even in a cafe, then it's important that we reschedule until a more appropriate time when they can ensure their own confidentiality. Okay, so another option we have is whether to use virtual backgrounds, or whether, as I have right now, whether to use the room exactly as it is and make sure that it's relatively tidy. So let me give you a sense of what some of these backgrounds might look like. We could use something that looks rather like a therapy room. We could also use something quite relaxing, such as a beach video. It can be a video or an image. Or we could select an image or a video that is somewhat more abstract. And do be aware that there will always be these aberrations, both in terms of areas which won't be properly processed, and also whenever there is movement, the background approach will tend to break down somewhat. Also consider the level of contrast between you and your real background. That is what allows, in this case, Zoom to be able to differentiate between you and the real physical background behind you. So make sure there's a good level of contrast. Okay, so how do we get, in this case, Zoom to display a different background? Well, first of all, we need to hover the mouse so that we're able to see the video settings, which are hidden underneath here. So we then select choose virtual background, and then we have a variety of backgrounds that we can select from. I like this one, and that's really all there is to it. If whilst we're there we also want to apply a filter, then we're in the right sort of area to do that. More later. If you want to revert that so there is no background at all, again you simply click there again and then click on that arrow, that cross, to close the settings window. That's really all there is to it. Something else to be aware of is the concept of filters. If nothing else, so you can identify when they're being used and perhaps remove them. Filters essentially are overlays on top of a standard image that allow you to alter your appearance. The most minimal one many of us tend to use is something that improves our look and makes us look a little more beautiful, let's say. So that's one generic filter that many of us tend to use, even if we only apply it very slightly. Other filters, such as some of the ones that follow, are a little less subtle. Some of the filters are quite subtle. This filter, for example, emphasizes my eyebrows and gives me a slight moustache and a little beard. And this filter quite substantially applies the touch up my appearance setting, which tends to remove wrinkles and small blemishes, for example. Now, most of the time you'll probably want to remove all of the filters, but if you do notice that someone else has applied them and left them in place, then do look at, in this case, the zoom settings and remove them. If the previous person using the computer used something called Snapchat, then that's a somewhat more involved process and you need to select a different video source. Okay, so let's take a look at how we apply a filter. Again, you need to hover over the video area down here where it says stop video and click on the little hat there. And this time around we'll select choose video filter, and this is zoom again. So what we're looking for are some of the studio effects, which is a beta facility at the moment. So we click there and we now see many more options than we had previously. I can, for example, if I so desired, give myself some improved eyebrows, maybe make those a little less subtle, or yes, that's more believable. I can give myself a beard, Blaze Royale. Let's try that. And again, I can make that more opaque, so it's more overt. There we go. And I can change the color of it as well if I so desired. If you wanted, you could also put in place a different lip color if you so desired. And you can also apply filters more broadly around the edge of the screen, like so, for example, which is a nice subtle TV effect, or not so subtle. And there are a variety of other ones as well. There are other filters such as adding additional eyewear, for example, or other effects such as this, if you so desired. Perhaps if you were working with kids, that might be advantageous. So there are a variety of filters for different occasions, which you can employ if you so desire. And it's all about exploring to see what is available to find an approach and a filter that works for you. Another concept that we need to consider is what type of microphone to select. Here I'm using a headset microphone, the downside of which is it's very near your mouth, and any sounds that your mouth makes will tend to be quite accurately picked up by the microphone. However, one of the advantages is they are often noise cancelling, so often background sound is almost entirely removed from the equation and is often not picked up at all. The other alternative is a much more sensitive freestanding microphone, the downside of which, although you get less noises from your mouth being picked up, the downside is that sometimes they can be incredibly sensitive and can pick up noise from streets away. Okay, so that's a roundup of some of the issues that I've encountered and some of the lessons that I have personally learnt in my experience of using, in this case, Zoom as a method of conducting online therapy. So I wonder what lessons you've learnt and also where you feel that online therapy will go from this point forwards. Given the option, will patients want to continue using online approaches, or will they flock back into our therapy rooms? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that little video. Any questions?
So yeah, thank you. So I'm here. I don't know how I look. I've just tried your filter.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, we've got. It's totally exciting, Bill. Let me remove this filter. Okay.
Keep it on.
So I think it was. I think it was a great presentation because you know, I think these are these problems faced, and these are a lot of questions actually faced by our participants who are doing virtual therapy. And okay. And I was actually very distracted because I was trying to count the number of. I think you've got an impressive collection of ties because I kept watching your tie changing. So. All right. So, okay. So there's some questions here. One of it is whether you would sort of set the virtual background according to the client's comfort, because you may pick up that they are not comfortable with certain backgrounds or conditions.
Yes, and equally something like water, anything wave-based could well have a negative effect in terms of people wanting to use a toilet, for example. Equally, if you have a bridge, then maybe that might be a trigger for, it could be a phobic trigger. So one really does have to be quite cautious with the selection of backgrounds, avoiding triggers where appropriate.
And I think because those backgrounds are those that are available, but you are also you can download your own background.
You most certainly can, yeah. One that I see quite a lot of people using is a blurred background, which is quite a useful generic one, which means that you can use something really quite nebulous that very few people will negatively respond to. Do also bear in mind that when you use virtual backgrounds, you're increasing the amount of processing being done your side. That could feasibly have a negative impact on call quality.
Someone here has asked, I think there's Tanzira Noor has asked, I'm not sure that I'm getting this right. TV effect can be used for two-stage dissociation. So I think she's asking whether we can use the virtual background to like a TV setting to apply that for two-stage dissociation. I hope I got that right, the question.
Well, it would be you within the screen, so it would be you as a therapist being subjected to that two-stage dissociation. So I'm not sure how that would be advantageous, unless you, I'm not sure, well, that overlay would not allow you to then, let's say, share your screen and then display something within that. You'd need to do that separately. There are two different types of technology. Yeah. So, you know, you can't mix and match them. Yeah.
I think earlier there was a comment or a question regarding whether you use the phone or whether you use a laptop or a desktop. Do you use phones as well?
Only as an emergency backup. I use a tablet as an emergency backup. If that doesn't work out, then I will go down the route of landline phone calls. You need multiple backups. So if one fails, you've got something else to fall back on. And my ultimate is literally a landline, which if I have no power, I will still have my landline. So I will literally call them. I've only had to use that once, and I had a total blackout, total power cut. I do have a UPS backed up system, but it only really gives me maybe half an hour. And this was at the beginning of a session.
I guess why some of them are asking as well is because I don't know whether this is an issue in the UK, but for us sometimes our Wi-Fi is very unstable, and the data that we have for our phone may be stronger. But I think someone's made a point here that it might be difficult to change our background or use filters when we're using our phone. Yes, I don't know whether the function is, yeah.
Equally, there are many computers that do not support. For example, on this system, I can't use backgrounds or filters because the CPU isn't powerful enough. Where you do have bandwidth issues and you're using a phone, then there are occasions when 4G may outperform your normal internet connection. Do also bear in mind Wi-Fi, even in a property, can often be quite poor. So if you possibly can, your best route for stability and quality is a direct Ethernet connection using a laptop. So that's the maximum quality you can get using your own systems. With Wi-Fi, you often get interference from neighbors, so you may get a stronger connection if you change your Wi-Fi bandwidth on your router.
And we've got some sharing here from Fiona, which I think is quite interesting, because she said she's been using the filters and having a bit of fun, and that has really worked for her as well. And she says looking directly into the camera can create an excellent connection with the clients. Thanks for your sharing. Yes, I think
Also remember to remove the filters when you're done. It's quite easy to keep them on without realizing it.
Yes, we've read about the case where the lawyer shows up for a court proceeding looking like a cat, speaking like a cat. So if you don't switch your filter off, or that Snapchat which you spoke about, and you've got a serious client, and then you start speaking as a cat, so it
that
might
was
be
Snapchat. That was definitely Snapchat,
nice.
which is why he had such a big problem trying to remove it, because it's not a standard filter. It's actually a different video feed.
Yes.
Big overhead as well.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That was really awesome. And I think we learned so much from your session. And I think the way you presented it was really commendable. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, I'm going to pass back to Tanusha now.
Okay.